They ripped the veil from my head and tore at my wedding dress while their guests filmed it all, laughing like it was some kind of sick entertainment. My mother-in-law's voice cut through the chaos. "Gold digger, you tricked my son into this marriage." As I stood there, trembling in my torn gown, humiliated in the center of their marble ballroom. But what the Wards didn't know was that my father, the man they dismissed as a nobody, had seen it everything. And he was already on his way, bringing a level of power that would shatter their perfect world forever. Stay with me until the end, because what my father did to this family will leave you absolutely speechless. Trust me, the way he dismantled their empire piece by piece is something you need to see to believe. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare truly began. My name is Elena Cruz, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the cruelest people are the ones who smile at your wedding while planning your destruction. Before all of this, before the humiliation, before the revenge, before the Wards learned my real name, I was just a final-year architecture student who fell in love with the wrong man's family. My name is Elena Cruz, and 6 months ago, I believed love could bridge any gap. I was wrong. I met Ethan Ward on a Tuesday afternoon at the Meridian Art Gallery, where I worked part-time between classes. He stood in front of a brutalist sculpture for 20 minutes, just staring, while most visitors snapped photos and moved on. Something about his stillness caught my attention. "You actually see it," I said, approaching with the catalog I didn't need to carry. He turned, and I noticed his eyes first, warm brown, like aged whiskey, with smile lines that suggested he laughed often. "See what?" "That it's not about the concrete, it's about the empty spaces, what the architect chose not to build." His smile was slow, genuine. "You study architecture?" "Final year." "You?" "Civil engineer." He extended his hand. "Ethan Ward." I shook it, feeling the calluses that told me he actually worked with his hands. Elena Cruz. No recognition flickered in his expression, no calculation, just interest. That's what I fell for. Not his tailored jacket or the watch I'd later learn cost more than my semester's tuition. I fell for the way he listened when I sketched building designs on napkins at coffee shops. The way he'd drive 40 minutes just to watch the sunset from the architecture building's roof with me. How he never made me feel small for working 3 jobs to stay independent. "Why don't you ask your family for help?" he'd asked once, gently. "Because I need to know I built this life myself," I'd answered. He'd kissed my forehead. "That's what I love about you. You don't need anyone." Within 8 months, he proposed on that same gallery floor in front of the sculpture where we'd met. Simple band, simple question. "Build a life with me?" I said yes before I'd even met his family. That was my first mistake. The Wards lived in a different universe, one where marble columns framed every doorway, and casual family dinner meant 7 courses served by staff who wouldn't meet your eyes. Margaret Ward, Ethan's mother, had a smile like frosted glass, beautiful, cold, and sharp enough to cut. "Elena Cruz," she'd said at our first meeting, my name measured and found wanting on her tongue. "How quaint. And your family, Dieter, what do they do?" "My father is in construction," I'd said carefully. "Not a lie. Just incomplete. Construction. She'd exchanged a glance with her husband, Charles, whose silence I'd learned was its own form of judgment. How industrious. Ethan had squeezed my hand under the table. Don't worry, his touch said. They'll come around. But they never did. His sister Lila played a crueler game, befriending me with borrowed clothes and whispered advice, all while poisoning every room I left. Mother says you're trying so hard. It's really quite sweet. I endured it because I loved Ethan, because he'd promised me it would get better after the wedding, because I stupidly believed that love, real, earned love, could survive his family's disdain. The wedding was my second mistake. Margaret insisted on hosting it at the Ward estate. Family tradition, she declared, and Ethan had nodded along, too weak to fight his mother even on this. Small ceremony, she'd said. Intimate. Just close family and friends. When I'd called my father to tell him, his voice went quiet. You don't want me there, mihija. It's not that, Papa. It's complicated. They're very traditional, and I need to do this on my own terms. The silence stretched long enough that I almost broke. Está bien, mija. But remember what I told you when you left for university. I know, Papa. Say it. Cruz blood builds and destroys empires. See, and if they ever break you, mi hija, if they ever make you feel less than what you are, you call me. ¿Entiendes? I promised, never believing I'd need to. The wedding morning had been perfect until it wasn't. Now, standing in the rain outside the mansion gates, barefoot and shaking, my torn dress clinging to my skin, I finally understood what my father had been trying to tell me. Some families don't just reject you. They destroy you for sport. My fingers trembled as I dialed the number I'd memorized but never saved. One ring. Papa, I whispered, and my voice cracked on that single word, shattering 6 months of pretending I was strong enough to survive the wards alone. Don't move, mi hija. I'm coming. The line went dead, and somewhere in the city I knew Diego Cruz was already making calls that would turn the Ward family's perfect world into rubble.
The invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock so thick it felt like armor. Mrs. Margaret Ward cordially invites you to an evening of philanthropy and grace. Join us in welcoming our newest family member to society. See? Ethan had said, kissing my temple as I held the card between trembling fingers. I told you she'd come around. 3 months had passed since the wedding. 3 months of invisible cuts that left no blood, but plenty of scars. Margaret had perfected the art of destruction through 1,000 small dismissals. The way she'd hand me her empty glass of family dinners without a word, as if I were staff. How she'd accidentally seat me at the far end of the table during holiday meals, too far away for conversation, but close enough to hear her praise Ethan's ex-girlfriend, Victoria. From such a lovely family, you know. Your accent is quite charming, Elena. So colorful. We'll have to work on softening it for the important events. Charles, Ethan's father, had a different approach. Complete erasure. He'd look through me as if I were glass, addressing Ethan even when I was the one speaking. At Christmas, he'd handed out gifts to everyone except me, then acted surprised when Ethan pointed it out. Oh, I thought she'd prefer something more practical. Cash, perhaps. But Lila was the cruelest, because she pretended to be kind. "Elena, wear this," she'd say, lending me designer dresses that were always one size too small, then watching me struggle with the zippers. "Mother will appreciate the effort, even if it doesn't quite fit right." She'd pull me aside at parties to whisper, "Don't mention your father's business tonight. Mother thinks it's so common. Construction, I mean. Nothing wrong with it, of course, but you understand." I'd smile and nod, swallowing my rage, telling myself it was temporary, that once they truly knew me, once I proved I wasn't after their money or status, everything would shift. I was a fool. The worst part? Ethan never defended me. Not really. "They just need time," he'd say whenever I brought up his mother's cruelty. "You know how traditional families are. They'll warm up eventually." "Your mother called me the charity case in front of the staff, Ethan." "She didn't mean it like that. You're being sensitive." "Your father won't even look at me." "He's like that with everyone. Don't take it personally." But how could I not take it personally when I was the target? Still, I stayed. I endured. Because when it was just the two of us, Ethan was the man I'd fallen in love with. Tender, attentive, full of dreams about the house we'd design together, the trips we'd take, and the life we'd build far away from his family's suffocating expectations. One day, he'd promise, holding me close, "We'll have our own place, our own world, and none of this will matter." I believed him. So when the charity dinner invitation arrived, I saw it as a turning point, a peace offering, Margaret's way of finally accepting me into the family. "What should I wear?" I asked Ethan that evening, studying my modest wardrobe with new hope. "Whatever makes you feel beautiful," he said, distracted by his phone. "Just maybe something elegant. Mother's friends will be there. First impressions, you know." First impressions, as if I hadn't been making impressions for 3 months straight, each one dismissed or mocked. I spent 2 weeks' salary on a simple silk dress, midnight blue, modest neckline, elegant without trying too hard. I practiced conversation topics, memorized the names of Margaret's charity board members, even researched proper wine pairings so I wouldn't embarrass myself. Leela had called the day before the event, her voice saccharine sweet. "Elena, I'm so excited for tomorrow night. Mother's really going all out. She even hired a photographer. This is your night, you know, your official welcome." Really? Hope had bloomed dangerously in my chest. "Absolutely. Oh, and wear something with pockets. You'll need somewhere for your phone and lipstick. Mother hates visible purses at formal events." "Thank you, Leela. That's really helpful." "Of course. What are sisters for?"
I had adjusted my dress that evening, adding a small clutch that could pass as inconspicuous. Inside, my phone, lipstick, and the small silver comb my father had given me for luck on my wedding day. The night of the dinner, I stood in front of our bedroom mirror, smoothing down the silk, trying to calm the butterflies rioting in my stomach. Ethan came up behind me, adjusting his tie. "You look perfect. You think your mother will approve? She invited you, didn't she? That's approval enough." But something in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, quickly buried, should have warned me. "Ethan," I'd started, turning to face him, "if anything feels wrong tonight, nothing will go wrong." He'd kissed me quickly, already moving toward the door. "Come on, we're going to be late." The Ward mansion glowed like a jewel box that evening. Champagne fountains sparkled under crystal chandeliers. Women in gowns that cost more than my entire education glided past, air-kissing and laughing. The smell of old money, expensive perfume, imported flowers, and quiet superiority filled every room. Margaret found me immediately. "Elena, darling." Her smile was all teeth. "So glad you could make it. That dress is sweet. Very you. Translation, cheap." "Thank you for inviting me, Margaret." "Well, we can't have the family thinking we're unwelcoming, can we?" She linked her arm through mine, steering me toward the center of the ballroom. Come, there are so many people who want to meet Ethan's wife. The way she said wife made it sound like mistake. The evening passed in a blur of forced introductions and thinly veiled insults disguised as questions. So you worked at a gallery. How artistic. Your father's in construction. Blue-collar work is so admirable. You met Ethan where? Oh, how modern. I smiled until my face ached, sipped champagne I couldn't taste, and told myself I just had to survive until midnight. Then, halfway through the evening, Margaret took the microphone. The music stopped, conversations died. Every face in that glittering ballroom turned toward the small stage where she stood, spotlit and regal. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight, she began, her voice warm and gracious. But tonight, her expression shifting, something darker sliding beneath the gracious mask. I must address something deeply painful. Unfortunately, we have discovered that someone among us, someone we welcomed into our family, has betrayed our trust in the most despicable way. My blood went cold. Elena, she said, turning those ice-chip eyes directly on me, care to explain why my ruby necklace was found in your clutch? The world stopped spinning. Every eye in that ballroom turned toward me like searchlights, and I knew, with sudden devastating clarity, that I'd never stood a chance. This was never a welcome party. It was an execution. And I dressed up and walked right into it, smiling.
The champagne tasted like metal in my mouth. Something was wrong. I'd felt it from the moment I stepped into the ballroom, the way you feel a storm building before the first drop of rain falls. The air crackled with an energy that had nothing to do with celebration. The Ward mansion had been transformed into something from a fever dream. Crystal chandeliers dripping light like liquid diamonds, champagne fountains cascading gold, and flowers everywhere, their perfumes so thick it felt like drowning. Women draped in jewels worth more than houses moved through the crowd like predators in silk, their laughter sharp as broken glass. I stood near a marble column, clutching my small clutch with both hands, trying to look like I belonged. "There you are, Leela," appeared at my elbow, radiant in emerald green. "Mother's been looking for you. She wants to introduce you to the Ashfords. They're very important in the charity circuit." "Leela, Come on, this is your night." She looped her arm through mine, steering me deeper into the crowd. Her grip was too tight, her smile too bright. The servants moved differently tonight, stiff, mechanical. Every time I caught one's eye, they'd look away too quickly, their expressions carefully blank. And the whispers. God, the whispers. They followed me like smoke. "That's her. Can you believe Margaret allowed this?" Poor Ethan. I tried to find him in the crowd, my husband, my anchor, but he disappeared after the first hour, called away by his father for urgent business talk. Now, standing in the center of this glittering trap, I'd never felt more alone. "Elena, darling!" Margaret glided toward me, resplendent in black silk and diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. She air-kissed both my cheeks, her perfume choking. "Having a wonderful time?" "It's beautiful, Margaret. Thank you for—" Of course, of course." She waved dismissively. "Leela, dear, have you shown Elena where to freshen up, the powder room?" "Just about to, Mother." "Wonderful. And, Elena," Margaret's hand closed around my wrist, her perfectly manicured nails pressing into my pulse point. "Do stay close, Elena. I have something very special planned for later." The way she said special made my skin crawl. Leela pulled me toward the ladies' room, chattering about the guests, the decorations, how proud Mother was of tonight's turnout. While I washed my hands, she stood behind me, watching my reflection in the ornate mirror. "Your clutch is so cute," she said suddenly. "Can I see?" "What? Oh, sure."
She'd already plucked it from where I had set it on the marble counter. Her hands moved quickly, opening it, peering inside. Just checking if you need lip gloss. The lighting in the ballroom is so harsh. She handed it back with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. That should have been my warning. We returned to the ballroom just as the orchestra hit a crescendo and stopped mid-note. The silence that followed felt violent. Margaret stood on the small stage where the band had been playing, microphone in hand, her face a mask of gracious concern. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice rang out, crystal clear, practiced. "Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Your generosity means the world to those less fortunate than ourselves." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. However, she paused, and something shifted in her expression, something cold and calculated. "I'm afraid I must address a deeply troubling situation. You see, earlier this evening, a piece of my personal jewelry went missing, the Burmese ruby necklace. Many of you have seen me wear it, worth approximately $2 million. Gasps erupted, heads turned. The crowd pressed closer. My heart stopped. Now, I don't want to believe that anyone here would steal from us. We're all family, after all. Friends. People of character. Her eyes found mine across the room, pinning me like a butterfly to a board. But sometimes we let people into our lives who don't share our values. People who see our generosity as weakness. "Margaret," I started forward, but the crowd had closed around me like a noose. "Elena, darling," she dripped false sympathy. "Would you mind coming up here for a moment?" Every phone in the room rose simultaneously. Cameras clicked, video recording lights blinked red. I walked toward the stage on legs that felt like water, my clutch still gripped in my sweating palm. "Elena," Margaret said gently, almost motherly, "I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding, but Leela mentioned she saw something concerning in your clutch earlier. Would you mind showing us what's inside?"
What? No, there's nothing. I don't. Please, for everyone's peace of mind. Lila materialized beside me, her hand outstretched. "Here, let me help." She snatched the clutch before I could react, opened it wide, and gasped. A performance so perfectly rehearsed, I could almost admire it. "Mother!" Her voice trembled with manufactured shock. "It's here, the necklace. It's right here." She pulled out the ruby necklace, blood-red stones catching the light, impossible to miss, and held it high like evidence at a trial. The ballroom exploded. Oh my God, she actually stole it. I knew something was off about her. Gold digger. Criminal. "No!" My voice cracked. I've never seen that before. Someone put it there. Lila, you had my clutch in the bathroom. Are you accusing my daughter of framing you? How dare you? After everything we've done for you, after we welcomed you into our family, despite your background? I'm telling the truth. I would never. Guards. Margaret's voice rang out. Search her. Thoroughly. We need to make sure she hasn't taken anything else. 2 massive security guards appeared from nowhere. Their hands closed around my arms like vices. Please, you don't understand. Don't touch me with your lies, Margaret hissed, stepping closer. You wanted our name, our money, our status? Let's see what you really are. Her hand shot out and grabbed the neckline of my dress. Time slowed to a crawl. I saw her fingers twist the fabric, saw the silk tear, heard the gasps as my dress ripped from shoulder to waist. Camera flashes exploded like lightning, phones thrust forward recording everything. The crowd pressed closer, vultures circling fresh kill. Margaret, stop! She yanked again, the dress gave way completely. I stood there in my underwear, arms pinned by guards, tears streaming down my face,
while 200 people documented my destruction. "Look at her," someone whispered. "Pathetic. She's crying." Trash pretending to be treasure. Margaret's voice rose above it all. "Let this be a lesson. You cannot buy class, you cannot fake breeding, and you certainly cannot con your way into a family like ours." The guards dragged me backward. My bare feet scraped against marble. The crowd parted, their disgust palpable. "Where's Ethan? Where's my husband?" No one answered. They threw me out the front gates like garbage. The iron clanged shut behind me. Rain had started falling, cold, punishing drops that mixed with my tears. I collapsed on the wet driveway, clutching the remains of my dress, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. A young waiter appeared, his eyes filled with pity. "Miss, here." He pressed his phone into my hand. "Call someone, please." My fingers trembled as I dialed the number I'd sworn never to use. 1 ring. 2. "Papa." The word broke open something inside me. "Papa, they broke me." Silence. Then his voice, low and deadly calm. "No, mihija. They just built their own graves." The line clicked. In the distance, thunder rolled. And Diego Cruz began making calls that would turn the Ward family's empire into dust. The rain fell harder. I sat on the cold stone steps outside the gate, wrapped in the waiter's jacket, my body still shaking, not from cold, but from the aftershock of humiliation. Inside the mansion, music had resumed. Laughter drifted through the walls. They'd already forgotten me. But my father hadn't. 30 minutes after his promise, I heard it, a low rumble that grew louder, deeper, like the earth itself was answering a call. Headlights pierced through the rain. Not one car, a convoy. 6 black SUVs rolled up the Ward driveway with military precision, their engines a coordinated thunder. Floodlights mounted on the lead vehicles lit up the entire estate, turning night into stark, unforgiving day. The mansion doors burst open. Guests spilled onto the portico, champagne glasses still in hand, confusion rippling through their ranks. The center SUV's door opened. Diego Cruz stepped out. My father stood 6'3", but in that moment, backlit by floodlights and flanked by men in dark suits, he looked like a force of nature given human form. His charcoal suit was immaculate despite the rain. His silver hair swept back, his face carved from stone in fury. Behind him emerged a small army, lawyers carrying briefcases, men with badges I recognized as federal, and, my breath caught, news vans pulling up to the gates, cameras already rolling. "Papa," I whispered, struggling to my feet. His eyes found mine immediately. For 1 second, the terrifying mask cracked, and I saw grief flash across his face. Grief at what they'd done to his daughter. Then it hardened again, colder than before. He strode toward me, removing his suit jacket as he walked. Without a word, he wrapped it around my shoulders, his hands gentle on my trembling frame. "I'm here now, mihija," he said quietly, from my ears only. "Watch what happens when they touch what belongs to Diego Cruz." Then he turned toward the mansion and his voice carried like thunder. "Margaret Ward!" The crowd froze. My father walked straight through the open doors, his entourage following. Guests scrambled backward. Someone dropped a champagne flute. It shattered like a gunshot. Margaret stood near the stage, her face drained of color. "Who are you? You can't just barge into here. Security!" "Your security now works for me." Diego's voice was eerily calm as he climbed the stage steps. "As of 20 minutes ago, when I purchased their employment contracts." Charles appeared, blustering. "Now see here, this is private property." "No, Charles, this is my property. You've been living in a house mortgaged to Cruz Capital for the past 18 months. Did you not know I knew?" The room erupted in whispers. Diego took the microphone from Margaret's frozen hand. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize for the interruption. My name is Diego Cruz, founder and CEO of Cruz Holdings. Perhaps some of you have heard of us. We build cities. We finance empires. His eyes swept the crowd like a blade, and occasionally we dismantle them. What are you? Margaret started. I'm here, Diego continued, his voice dropping to something more dangerous. For my daughter, the woman you just humiliated. The woman you called a thief and stripped naked while you recorded it for entertainment. He gestured to his team. Immediately, the massive screens behind the stage, the ones they'd used for their charity slideshow, flickered to life. Security footage appeared, crystal clear, time-stamped from earlier that day. The Bellamy Jewelry showroom. Lila browsing necklaces, then there I was, trying on earrings at a different counter, my back turned. Lila glancing around, ensuring no one was watching, her hand darting out, snatching the necklace, slipping it into her purse. The crowd gasped, but the footage continued. Later that evening, the mansion's powder room, Lila taking my clutch while I washed my hands, her fingers opening it, dropping the necklace inside, a small, satisfied smirk on her face. No, Lila shrieked from somewhere in the crowd. That's fake. He doctored it. The timestamps are verified by 3 independent security firms. We have the original drives. Chain of custody is impeachable. Margaret's face had gone from white to gray. This is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Diego's voice could have cut steel. You framed my daughter? You staged a public execution to destroy her reputation? You put your hands on her? You tore her dress while strangers filmed it? The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some phones that had been recording earlier were hastily lowered. Mr. Cruz, please. Charles tried to approach him, hands raised in supplication. Diego didn't even look at him. He nodded to another lawyer who stepped forward with a tablet. Let me explain your situation, Charles. Ward Construction Group, your company, carries $47 million in outstanding debts. Most of that debt is held by various creditors. He paused. Was held. As of 1 hour ago, Cruz Capital purchased every single note, every loan, every line of credit. Charles stumbled backward. Your mansion? Mortgage to Cruz Capital. Your vacation home in the Hamptons? Leveraged against loans I now own. Your art collection, your vehicles, the jewelry your wife is wearing right now. All collateral against debts you can't possibly repay. Margaret made a strangled sound. Diego's voice carried to every corner of the room. But here's the interesting part. 6 months ago, when your company was desperate for capital, you offered shares to private investors. Do you remember that, Charles? Charles's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. I bought them, quietly, through shell corporations, different names, small percentages that didn't require disclosure. Diego smiled, and it was terrifying. As of tonight, I own 73% of Ward Construction Group, which means I own you. That's not possible, Margaret whispered. It's not just possible, it's done. He gestured, and the screens changed again, showing legal documents, transfer records, signed contracts. Effective immediately. Your company, your assets, your estate, everything you've built your precious reputation on is under Cruz Holdings' control. The ballroom erupted in chaos, guests shouting, phones ringing, people rushing toward the exits. Please, Margaret fell to her knees, mascara running down her face. Please, Mr. Cruz, we didn't know. If we'd known who you were. Exactly. Diego's voice cut through her pleading like a knife. If you'd known I was rich, you would have treated my daughter like a queen, but because you thought she came from nothing, you felt entitled to humiliate her. That's not a defense, Margaret, that's a confession. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. The doors burst open again. Ethan rushed in, his suit rumpled, panic written across his face. "What's happening? Elena!" I stepped out from behind my father, still wrapped in his jacket, my torn dress hidden beneath it. Ethan's eyes widened. "Elena, thank God! Tell your father to stop this. Please, we can fix this. We can—" "Where were you, Ethan? Where were you when your mother tore my dress, when they called me a thief, when they threw me out like garbage?" I didn't know. I was in my father's study, I swear." "You didn't know because you didn't want to know." Tears burned my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall anymore. Not anymore. "You let them treat me like trash for months. You told me to be patient, to try harder, to prove myself worthy." I stepped closer. "Love doesn't watch in silence, Ethan. Love doesn't make excuses while someone you claim to cherish gets destroyed." "Elena, please. We're done." The words felt like breaking free from chains. "Sign whatever divorce papers my lawyers send you. It won't take long. You wards are very efficient when you want something gone." Diego placed his hand on my shoulder. "We're leaving. All of you," he addressed the crowd one final time. "And, Margaret, you'll receive formal termination of your lease in the morning. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." 30 days? Charles roared. "This is our home." "No, it's my property, and I'm done letting you live in it." My father turned, keeping me close to his side. His security team formed a protective barrier around us as we walked through the crowd. People parted like water, their faces pale with shock. No one spoke. No one dared. As we stepped into the rain, Diego wrapped his arm around me. "You're safe now, Elena. I promise you, no one will ever touch you again." I leaned into him, finally allowing myself to break. "Thank you, Papa. Always, mija. Always." Behind us, I heard Margaret's wail of desperation as reality sunk in. That night, my father didn't just take back my dignity, he took their empire. And he did it in less than an hour. 6 months can feel like a lifetime when you're rebuilding yourself from ash. The Wards learned this the hard way. Their mansion, the one with marble columns and champagne fountains, was repossessed within 60 days. I heard they held an estate sale, watching strangers pick through their precious heirlooms like vultures over a carcass. The art collection Margaret had curated for 30 years sold for pennies on the dollar. Ward Construction Group filed for bankruptcy 3 months after my father's takeover. The company that had built half the city's skyline was liquidated, its assets absorbed into Cruz Holdings. Charles tried to find work elsewhere, but no one in the industry would touch a man who gambled his empire and lost. Ethan was offered a position, junior project coordinator at one of our smaller subsidiaries, nowhere near the executive offices, nowhere near power. He took it. He had no choice. Lila disappeared entirely. Last I heard, she'd moved to Europe, trying to rebuild her reputation where no one knew the Ward name had become synonymous with fraud and cruelty. And Margaret? My father had a particular sense of poetry when it came to her fate. She works as an administrative assistant at Cruz Foundation headquarters. Minimum wage, no benefits beyond the basics. Filing paperwork, answering phones, serving coffee at meetings. Every day, she sees my face on the wall, the official portrait of the foundation's chief architect. Every day, she's reminded of the woman she tried to destroy. I didn't ask for this arrangement. My father simply informed me one morning, his eyes glinting with quiet satisfaction. "Margaret Ward starts Monday. I thought you should know." "Papa," she applied herself, Elena. "She needs the work. I'm simply giving her an opportunity." His smile was thin. "The same opportunity she gave you, a chance to prove her worth." I couldn't argue with his logic, twisted as it was. Tonight, the Cruz Foundation was hosting its biannual gala, Resilience Rising, we called it. 300 women who'd rebuilt their lives after abuse, divorce, public scandal, or financial ruin. Women who'd been stripped of everything and found the strength to stand back up. Women like me. The ballroom, our ballroom, designed to my specifications, was nothing like the Ward estate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Clean lines, warm lighting, space that breathed instead of suffocated. Every woman here wore whatever made her feel powerful, whether that was a ball gown or jeans and a blazer. No judgment, no hierarchy, just survival and strength. I moved through the crowd in a simple white dress, greeting women whose stories I knew by heart. Sophia, who'd escaped a violent marriage with nothing but her children and a dream. Maya, who'd been blacklisted from her industry for speaking truth to power. Carmen, who lost everything in a business partnership gone wrong. Each of them had been given resources, capital, legal support, education, networks. Each of them had used those resources to build something new. This was my father's real empire. Not construction, not capital. Redemption. Miss Cruz? A timid voice behind me. I turned. Margaret stood there in a simple black uniform holding a tray of champagne glasses. She'd aged a decade in 6 months, her hair more gray than blonde, her hands trembling slightly, her eyes hollow. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She started, then stopped. Her throat worked. I wanted to say, I'm sorry, Elena. Truly, deeply sorry. The champagne glasses clinked together as her hands shook. Part of me, the part that still remembered the rain and the torn dress and the laughter, wanted to walk away, to let her stand there drowning in her regret. But that's not who I'd become. I know, I said softly. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to hear it. What I did, what we did, it was unforgivable.
Maybe. I took a champagne glass from her tray, giving her shaking hands a purpose. But I forgive you anyway. Her eyes widened, filling with tears. Not because you deserve it, Margaret, but because I deserve peace. I met her gaze steadily. I refuse to carry your cruelty around like a weight. That's your burden now, not mine. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. She moved away, disappearing into the crowd, and I felt something I hadn't expected, lightness, as if forgiving her had cut the last thread tying me to that terrible night. Elena! Another voice. This one I'd hoped never to hear again. Ethan stood at the edge of the ballroom, barely inside the entrance, as if afraid to come closer. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner, his expensive suit replaced with something off the rack, his confidence gone. I approached him slowly. You weren't invited. I know. Security almost didn't let me in. I told them I needed to see you. His eyes were desperate. Elena, please, can we talk? Really talk? There's nothing left to say. There's everything to say. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. I should have protected you. I should have stood up to my family. I see that now. He reached for my hand. I pulled away. Give me another chance. Let me prove I've changed. I studied him, this man I once loved, who'd promised me a life and delivered me to wolves. Ethan, do you know what I learned that night? He shook his head. That love without courage is just words, beautiful, empty words. I stepped back. You told me you loved me, but when it mattered, when I needed you to be brave, to stand beside me against your family, you disappeared. You chose comfort over courage. I was a coward. I admit it, but people can change. Maybe they can. But I don't need to wait around to find out. I smiled, and it felt genuine. I hope you do change, Ethan.
I hope you become the man you pretended to be, but you'll do it without me. Elena! Goodbye, Ethan. I walked away before he could respond, back into the ballroom full of women who'd survived worse than broken hearts. Later that night, I found my father on the balcony of Cruz Tower, his usual spot when he needed to think. The city sprawled below us, a constellation of lights and possibilities. "How was the gala?" he asked as I joined him, handing me a glass of wine. "Perfect. We raised $3 million for the scholarship fund." "Good." He smiled. "You've built something remarkable, mija. Something that will outlast buildings and banks." "You taught me how." "No." He shook his head. "I taught you about power and money. You taught yourself about grace." We stood in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe. "Papa," I said finally, "thank you for that night, for coming when I called." "Always, Elena. But you know what I'm most proud of?" "What?" "That you didn't need me to tell you your worth. You already knew it. Even in that moment, stripped and humiliated, you knew they were wrong about you. That's something I couldn't teach you. That's something you already were." Tears pricked my eyes. "You taught me that real power isn't revenge." "No. No. It's never letting them make you doubt your worth." He pulled me into a hug, and I let myself be his daughter again. Not the chief architect, not the survivor, just Elena.
"They tried to strip away your pride," he murmured. "But not my power," I finished. Below us, the city glittered with possibility. Somewhere out there, women were fighting battles like the one I'd fought. Somewhere, daughters were learning their worth. Somewhere, empires built on cruelty were beginning to crack. And I was here, standing on top of my father's tower, wearing my scars like armor. I am Elena Cruz, daughter of the storm they never saw coming. They tore my gown, but not my spirit. They stripped my dress, but not my dignity. And in the end, their cruelty didn't break me. It built me into something they could never touch again.